Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're going to we're going to start a week-long study into the book of Ecclesiastes of all books. When's the last time you've heard of that one? Actually, Ecclesiastes is a book packed full of wisdom, but it shouldn't be a book that's broken up into sections. It's more of a personal book. But I need to remind you guys of something before we get started into the book of Ecclesiastes. Christ has come. And because he has come, a way has been made and something very different, the end of a lot of repetitious cycles are happening, right? It's going to happen. We live in the era of Christ. Keep that in mind. Number two, there are a lot of things when you start reading the Old Testament that put things in perspective. You're going to hear things you have not heard before, right? Keep in mind, they are from the wisest person that ever was or will be again. No one was as wise as who we're about to read a record of. Keep that in mind. So he knew what he was talking about, okay? But he was also on a pursuit. He was on a big pursuit. And I'm thankful for this book because of the wisdom, because it stops sometimes when you can study in the Bible and oftentimes you hear more opinion than word. Okay, that happens a lot. For example, I'm going to bring up some things that are quite controversial. I'm not going to answer them. I'm going to just bring them up. A lot of people have pets. They wonder, are their pets going to heaven? You're going to hear an answer to that, right? But I need to remind you of something. You're talking about when you're learning, when you're fortifying your foundations, the entire point is that you don't live in the world created by mankind, but you live in a world that your Father has blessed you with at the moment, right? To have a walk of obedience, to learn in fact, are we supposed to suffer or not? And why do we suffer in the first place? All of these things are answered, right? Are you supposed to, who's better off, a person who has wisdom of both darkness and light, or just a person who has wisdom of light, or just a person who has experience in the darkness? Who's better off? All these are answered. So keep that in mind because it helps your foundation. Once your foundation is correct, I'm telling you, there are many things that are booted out of your life. Your life begins to change, period. And it's going to do so according to the Word of God. There are so many times in my own personal life that there were unanswered things that I had assumed, right? Now, they were kind of right, but they just weren't right. Kind of right won't work, right? You want to be sure about the Word of God so that your confidence is at a proper level. And Satan has no business working in your life where he would overcome you, any of you. All of you have been given power over Satan. You've been given all power over the enemy. But if you don't know what position you have, you will allow darkness to operate in places where it should not. And you'll find yourself begging the Lord to change something that he's already changed. And all you need to do is walk in it. And then you need to know how to walk in things. All these things are answered. It is a book packed full of wisdom. You're going to hear common sayings that people have had. They're going to break down. They won't stand up in this study. They just won't do it. All right? And we'll talk about the perspective by which he speaks. I think, again, this is a book that should be read in its entirety, I believe, not broken up in small sections, but for the sake of this study, because we have the ability to record, we're going to break this down into 4 sections, right? 2 or 3 chapters apiece, and we'll go from there. But I hope that you guys glean, especially in this beginning half, that it really challenges certain hearsays that you've heard, that we can all get back to the Word and have that solid foundation. By the way, do you guys know what causes the greatest cause of division between believers? Is the missing of foundational things. nothing should ever have the power to divide believers. Nothing should. Not a definition. Nothing should. Shouldn't have the power to divide. I certainly don't like that when that happens, right? If we all could fortify our foundations, if all of us could take a step back and say, you know what? I was born wrong. Let my father be right. Let me learn of him. And let my life be a testament to the righteousness in my life. See, because if you have righteousness in your life, darkness cannot exist. It can always resist, but it won't be in your life. You can learn that too. Jesus said the same thing. It's impossible for darkness and light to cohabitate, isn't it? To be in the same vessel at one time, that's impossible. You're either one or the other. But I'll tell you something. Where you have an absence of one, you're going to have the presence of the other. And there's one more element. It's called the heart of man. You will learn about that too. That's a third element that all of us have to overcome, and that's by choice. The Lord will always help you in those choices. But, well, let's get started, shall we? Take no offense tonight, right? As though I made some words up. I want you guys to read along with me, if you can do that. Take your Bibles out, knock the dust off. Let's get this thing going so that we can all be on the same page. Of course, if you have questions, we may have time for those tonight, but the majority of those questions we're going to reserve until the weekend, and we're going to do a summary of all of the book of Ecclesiastes, so that summary is going to be very important, by the way. It ties everything in. All right? You guys ready for this? Ready for this? Here we go. The words of a preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. So he was a king, son of David. We know who that was. But he begins saying, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Okay, when you first read this, it sounds like he's had too much wine, doesn't it? This is Ecclesiastes. Sounds like something has gone wrong somewhere, right? You're going to find out what. Verse 3, what profit hath a man of all his labor, which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh in. But the earth abideth forever. So he's saying, one generation comes, another passes away, and everything still keeps going around, right? The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place, where he arose. And the wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. The rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. Now, take note of this. The first thing, all things are full of labor. This is going to become very important to understand the context of which he's speaking. And he says, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. That's true. It's true. That is very true. Verse 8 is so true. The thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. There's no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come of those that shall come after. Right? So all things that have been shall be again. All things that are forecast in the future were said from the beginning. These things are echoes of what was already said. Verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. And I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. The sore travail hath God given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. Pause. Verse 13. So many times people look for reason in life. This is a very important element in this reading. Now, don't base everything from chapters 1 and 2. Don't do that. But he set it in his heart to find out all the travails of men, right? To search out the wisdom of all these things of men. And what he's saying is, you see, he said he gave his heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven, all things, right? He said, this sore travail hath God given the sons of men to be exercised wherewith. That means you too. That's what it means. It means you too. He says, I've seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Vanity, of course, is a passive thing, a useless thing, and vexation of spirit would be a draining of one's spirit, or something that just consumes. Doesn't really grant anything as spirit. The works in the earth, right? All of what you do in the earth does not grant anything as spirit. Now, before you challenge that, you have to hear the rest in context. But that is very true. The works of the earth do nothing for your spirit. They don't do anything, right? Let's continue to read so you find out why. He says, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. That which is empty, wanting, needs more. It cannot be numbered. They're countless, right? Countless. I commune with my own heart, saying, lo, I am come to great estate, and have got more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart hath great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is a vexation of spirit. See, so he was a smart guy, the wisest that ever was. He says, and I give my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. Oh, he's going out on the deep end, right? To know wisdom is one thing, but he didn't stop there. He said he gave his heart to know wisdom, comma, and what else? Madness and folly. Well, how do you do that? He's a wise person. He's going to tell you how he did it. I wouldn't do it. I can tell you that right now because it already happened to me. It happened to some of you too. But I wouldn't just voluntarily do it. No way. He says, for in much wisdom is grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Now, before you run away with that, all these things have to be placed in context. So that means, please don't ever say, well, Mike is wise, and so that's why I said, don't attribute that to me, right? Don't do that. Nor will I use that as an excuse, right? I won't do that, because in the context of what he's talking about, all these things put in context are giving you almost like the beginning of a blueprint to your own life, answers that you can almost not find anywhere else. It is an extraordinary book. Let me go to chapter 2. I said, my heart, go to now, and I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. So he's taken a step here. He said in his heart, go now, I will prove thee with mirth, right? You guys know what mirth is? Anybody? You know what mirth is? It's not a guy who went with him. That's not who it is. It's not who it is. Mirth is happiness, kind of like an excitement. Right? It's like an excitement. I know you guys think it's an item, but it's like excitement. He said, therefore, enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. Now, how is that useless? He said he set in his heart to go now with joy, right? With excitement. He's going forth with excitement and joy. Why is he calling that vanity? We'll see some truth is going to come out here. He said, behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and mirth, what doeth it? This happiness and energetic going forth, what is it doing? Nothing. He said, I sought mine heart to give myself unto wine. So not only did he go out into the world in his wisdom and live these different lifestyles, now he's become a drunkard. He said, I sought mine heart to give myself unto wine, not to the wise, but to wine. yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom. Right? So he's becoming a wino to understand it, to see it, to live it, to know it. Giving his heart to wisdom means it's almost like an experiment, right? He said to lay hold on folly. That means to touch it, to be the fool, to see what's the big deal. I'm telling you, I wouldn't do this. He said, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. I made me great works, and I builded me houses and planted me vineyards. So now he just took a path of another lifestyle. Now this guy is living out all these lifestyles to what? To gain wisdom. We don't have to do that because he already wrote about it, right? We don't have to go out there and become a drunk to see what's the big deal. To learn the intimacies of a drunk, he wrote about it. We don't have to do most things because he wrote about it. That's what makes this book so extraordinary. When you start to see this, it's going to blow you away. He said, I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them, all kinds of fruits. I made me pools of water, and water wherewith that wood that bringeth forth trees. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle above all that were in Jerusalem before me. I gathered me also silver and gold, the peculiar treasures of the kings and of provinces. I got me singers and women singers, and the delights of sons, men's, and musical instruments, and that of all sorts. So now he's the party guy, right? The rich party guy who sits up there and has everybody entertain him. He said, so I was great and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. All my wisdom remained with me. So he never lost his purpose in what he was doing. He never did that. Never lost his purpose. And he said, and whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor. And this was my portion of all my labor. He's about to name it. Listen. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and all the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit. And there was no profit under the sun. So of those things he did, of being the rich guy, of being the wino, of being the person with joy who goes out just to enjoy life, right? Of being a wise person, right? Who has all these subjects and servants, all of it was vanity and vexation of spirit. Now that just ruins everything, right? No, it doesn't. It gives you understanding if you take it to heart. If you take it to heart, it gives you understanding. Look at the world. Look at the world through all the years. All the years you can research history. Man has been doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, right? It's kind of like the elections. Every single time somebody gets elected, they give the same promises. People get built up. They elect a guy they want. The same thing happens. You know what happens? Somebody else gets elected. It's the same thing over and over again. And each time people get excited, they vote, they end up, not happy at the end, and somebody else gets elected. They do the same thing, and it's this never-ending cycle that we keep falling for. It's almost like we can't see it, like we give ourselves over to it, and we can't recognize it. Oh, didn't you know that life is the same way? And people go in circles, staying stuck in a lot of cases. And he's telling us that all these things of the world do not profit the spirit anything. And I have to remind you, he said he went forward with joy. In this one walk, he went forward with joy. And it too was vanity, right? So that walk, he's giving us all types of walks that we could imagine to take in all of its vanity and vexation of spirit. All of us are a testament to that too. If we were not a testament to that, we would never have frowned nor cried in sorrow, nor would we have said, Lord, why am I here? But all of us, just about all of us, have said that or thought that in our hearts. So we know that we took one of these paths and we found too that it was vanity and vexation of spirit. We just hold it up by reason of a type pride and something that's about to be named here soon. Oh, this book is packed full of wisdom. Stay with me. This is almost like a foundation before the foundation. So he looks at the works of what he did, all these different paths he took, and he's looking at it. And he says, "Now I turn myself to behold wisdom and the madness and folly. For what can a man do that cometh after a king? Even that which hath been done already, or already done. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly." Wisdom excels or increases folly. It does. Wisdom increases folly. And as far as light excelleth darkness. It does. Light increases darkness. The wise man's eye are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Hear what he just said? The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happened to the fool, so it happened even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this also is vanity. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. Seeing that which now in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool? Therefore I hated life, because the work that was wrought under the sun is grievous unto me, for all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. He says, and who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Yet shall he have rule over all my labor wherewith I have labored, and wherein I have showed myself wise under the sun. This is also vanity. What is he saying? Do you guys catch what he's saying? Let me give you a hint of what he's saying. With all these different lifestyles, he took this venture under to live, and he found that all was vanity and vexation of spirit. He found that the wise and the fool, right, both depart the earth. That all these strivings that men have unto themselves is all going up in smoke, right? All the labors one could ever commit and really put their hearts to, they don't know who's going to be left to, right? History does repeat itself because we have no record of kingdoms past a certain point, and neither did they. He said that in the first chapter, right? There are things they didn't know of even in his time, but those same things he didn't know of would be in the future. All of it's vanity, right? So why is he saying it's vanity and vexation of spirit? Because people pursue them as though somehow it's going to yield some supernatural thing as a fix to their lives, and it never does. You're starting to see that. When you pursue a lifestyle, when you pursue things, it's not a fix to your life. It's not going to fix your spirit. That's not what it's going to do. Can it be a blessing? You bet. You bet. But it's not going to fix your spirit. It's not going to give you the answers you want. Let me continue to read. He said, yea, I hated all my labor which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto men that shall be after me. And of course, he didn't know if they're going to be evil or what. He saw that was vanity. Therefore I went about to cause my heart to despair of all the labor which I took under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge, and in equity. Yet to a man that hath not labored, therein shall he leave it for his portion. This also is vanity and a great evil. Did you guys capture that? Chapter 2, verse 21. For there is a man whose labor is in wisdom, and in knowledge, and in equity, that is building. Yet to a man that hath not labored therein, where? In wisdom, in knowledge, and in equity, to a man who has not labored therein, Shall he leave it for his portion? This also is vanity and a great evil. What's a great evil? The man who did not labor for it. He's going to expand upon this. He says, for what hath man of all his labor, and of the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun, for all of his days are sorrows, and his travail grief, yea, his heart taketh no rest in the night. This is also vanity, also vanity. Let's continue. There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was, listen, that it was from the hand of God. Wait a minute. We got a changeover. Let me read that again. There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. Now, why would he say that a pursuit of life is vanity, but that what a person ends up doing in actuality is a gift of God when they do it in a decent and good way? Do you guys see that contrast? He pursued the lifestyle of these patterns people have in life, what they teach you to go and you go live like this, and you go get this, and you go give that, and you go and build yourself a kingdom. All these things men aspire to be, he said, was vanity and vexation of spirit. And then all of a sudden he says, there is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. Mind you, he didn't tell you what type labor, right? Nor did he tell you to go and pursue a specific type labor. That's not what he said, because we're about to solve this in a minute. But he's saying that there's nothing better for a man that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, he's saying, that it was from the hand of God. He said, for who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I? For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he giveth travail, to gather and to heap up, that he may give to him that is good before God. That also is vanity and vexation of spirit. And of course, he's pointing out the latter half of that. So what do we have here? What do we have? We have something Jesus continually talked about, the prophets talked about, but hardly nobody listened, right? Let me give an example before I take a break. There are a lot of people who believe in the Father, but they look at television, and those people on television, right? People who seemingly have influence, it causes them to attempt or to want to pursue exactly what they're pursuing. It causes another person to want to be in their shoes. And what that person does not know is that path set by the world is vain, and it's also vexation of spirit. So what is a clause here? That God appoints you things in the earth that you would never choose yourself. You somewhat find yourself doing them. Many people have found joy in types of employment or lifestyle they never chose. They have found it a joy to be given gifts and talents and employment and things to do, but they never picked it. And God has made their heart content in what he gave them. Are you starting to see this? Anybody seeing this? Because most people who end up quite joyful in life, they did not pick their profession. Do you know that? And most people who are full of sorrows, drink too much, and all these other things in life, they picked their profession. Isn't that a simple truth that somehow we miss it so many times? But why? Because the principles of the living God are real. And what he's doing in this world is real. And sometimes we act like he's not real, like he's not there. Like we have to pursue something in the world, do it in a specific way to find joy. Our life is proof that we cannot do it that way. It's not going to work, and it never has worked for anybody else. A facade is a facade. These folks that you see on television, these folks that you hear, all these influencers and everybody else, they have vexation of spirit. and all of what they're doing is vain. It will go into nothingness. What remains then? You do. When God plants you in a specific place, God is the one that's investing in you. God is the one that has planted things in you, and that won't return void, nor will it be vanity or vexation or spirit to him, but it's his everlasting joy. But if we do it, what can we do it to? We're just human beings right now. We have a spirit, yes, but our spirits are often vexed because we cannot reach this mythical destination the world said we could. So riches will not do it. You know that most people who win the lottery, right, they are in more financial trouble about 5 years down the road than they ever were before they won the lottery. Do you know that? Many of them wish they had never won the lottery. They do. They wish they had never won it because their lives are turned upside down. You don't hear about them anymore. You just don't. Horrible things happen to them too. Why? He told us here, because with gains in this world comes a vexation. How's that so? Because if you start gaining things, right? What was one thing we learned in these first 2 chapters? Wisdom excels or increases what? Folly. So what does light increase? Evil. The more light you have in you, the more evil is coming in your direction. Huh? The more wisdom you have within yourself, the more folly that's going to be around you. And it hunts for you. See, he's giving you caution because he knows all these paths. A lot of people, they want to be perfect, right? But Jesus already told them, no, you're not perfect. All the whole heavens know you're not perfect. Because if you were perfect, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here because your flesh would be overwhelmed. You'd have to be in supernatural form to continue that way. You can't be perfect and be here in the flesh. You would have to be the strongest individual on earth to be perfect and be here. Because there are laws in place, just like gravity. I give an example about folly and evil following light and wisdom. The Lord said he's going to abase anybody. Paul said the same thing when Paul was talking about that thorn in his side. He said that thorn was a messenger of Satan to buffet him, which was the resistance he faced. He went from place to place. Listen, and he said Christ would not remove it for a specific reason. Does anybody know what that reason is? He gave Paul the reason, but did anybody ever investigate the reason? Why he wouldn't remove it? It was so that Paul would not be elevated above the word he was speaking. See, if Paul went around and doing all these miracles, speaking perfect and doing this and doing that, people would surely worship him more than they would Jesus Christ, because he would be the evidence of the power of Christ working in the earth. And if he had no flaws, people wouldn't be able to help themselves but to follow him just like Christ. He said, I'm thankful to God he did this because he didn't want to disrespect Christ by that happening. He did not want to disrespect Christ by that happening. See, he asked 3 times to have it removed, and he said 3 times. 3 times. The Lord said, his grace was sufficient for him. That was the end of that. Once you get into that thing, you'll find out that Paul did not want to be edified higher than Christ. He said, surely they would worship him if he didn't have people that would tear down his message. Note that Paul can go in certain cities. He can go into certain places. He couldn't keep certain promises. Why? There were times when Paul was supposed to go somewhere, and then Satan would come against him, wreck the whole thing, and they were losing their confidence in Paul in certain areas. But that's the way the Lord works. The Lord does that because he knows exactly what we'll do. If we see a perfect example in the earth, we'll begin to worship it. People do it all the time. If a stuttering person like Moses, right, was to come on air, you guys wouldn't want to listen to somebody like that. I probably would, but you guys wouldn't. Most people they try to hear perfection. And when they hear that perfection, they go for it initially, right? Only once you get to know someone can you look beyond the flaws and all these other things and hear what's coming out of the mouth of that individual. But initially, you don't hear the person. You hear the presentation. That's what draws people. That's why people look the way they do. That's why they sound the way they do. Initially, they draw other people. Then when they get to know them, the Lord does something else. Because humility is necessary. Does a man want to take the credit of Christ upon himself? When people get attitudes, right? Because they get attitudes because no, the Bible works this way and I'm not going to accept it any other way. That's evil. God doesn't need us to defend his word. He doesn't need us to define it. He can give the entirety of the Bible to a mule. We saw examples of that, and speak through that same mule. Reading through Ecclesiastes is a very sobering message, but it's full of laws and wisdom of things that are so real that if one could capture it, they would not live in this fantasy life that's always going upside down. Do you not know that your life can stop going upside down? The storm can be over right now. Right now. But see, if the storm was over, could you have spiritually benefited from the storm itself? If the storm were to end right now, would you perpetuate something that God is wiping away from you? See, the storm came to clean you, to make you white, to wash you. That's why the storm came. But if the storm was taken away, would you be washed? Would you be corrected? Would you stand taller? Or would you go back to being the same individual that you were with the same flaws and mistakes you know nothing about? Every storm exposes weaknesses within you and within me. Every storm. They are critical and important. The question is, who would you be without the storms? Because if you look over your life at what your problems have exposed, would you have gotten rid of them yourself? The truth is, we had no willpower to get rid of our own problems. See, we always think we have the solution. We always think we know what's wrong with us. I was talking to somebody one time. They said, well, I already know what's wrong with me. I just need, wait a minute. So you know what's wrong with you, right? I said, why are you still broken if you know what's wrong with you? Well, I just need someone wait a minute, but you know what's wrong with you. Once you know what's wrong with you, once you can truly identify what's wrong with you, you can purge it yourself. There are people out there that will tell you in a heartbeat. They know what's wrong with them, right? They'll say, well, no, I don't need anybody to tell me. I know what's wrong. I just need, this to fix it with. That's all. And it's kind of sad, really, because these same people say this 30, 40, 50 years. They stay in the same rut for all those years. Why? Because they're the expert. They have become their own physician. And they're not. See, that's what we're talking about here. All these different lifestyles and pursuits, people always say to themselves, well, if I just have this job, then I could. Well, if I could just do this, then I could. Well, if I could take this break, then I could. That's taking a path in life that somebody else took that will yield nothing spiritually. And men do this generation after generation after generation after. I'll tell you, if somebody would listen to this Ecclesiastes, give it their real attention and cut the pattern that so many men take, they will be added to the free list, free of the idioms we go through all the time. And if we know what's wrong with us, well, I would advise no one to ever say that, right? No one ever say that. Hopefully you don't say that. Well, I know what's wrong. I just need this tool to fix it. Hopefully you'll say, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. Because the truth is, if we knew what was wrong in truth, we would have prayed the right prayer. God would not hesitate to answer the prayer. But I'll submit to you right now, we can't even identify the problem. All throughout our lives, God gently, he discloses what we're truly facing, what's truly in us, what we truly have to overcome. He never does it all at one time. He gently exposes this as we're growing. These first two chapters, as I said before, I personally don't believe that Ecclesiastes should ever be broken up. Because of that, I'm going to take a break. We're going to jump right into chapter 3. Listen, no one take offense, and remember, Remember these first two chapters. If you go back over these first two chapters and really get the singer spirit, because you're going to have to go back in yourselves. The Lord will draw your attention to specific parts of it just for you, right? But if you get to know this for yourselves, you're going to see how he went out to these different lifestyles and why. You're going to have more reasons as to why he called them vanities and vexation of spirit. The vexation of spirit part is awful. And indeed, it is how this earth continues to go through circles and cycles, never-ending cycles that man cannot free himself from. And it's time for you to identify it so that you can listen, so that you cannot follow the trail of the world in these worldly things. I'm talking about everything too. He just said he was a preacher. He said even the preaching, guys, you just got to read it yourself, because I'm telling you, things are going in a circle revolving, and people are going to have the same fate as those that came before them. Why? Because they choose to follow the same dream. And if you haven't noticed, the world is pretty good at selling things. They taught you how to live your lives. They taught you that you ought to have a couch and a coffee table and curtains with blinds and all this other stuff. And you know what he's saying initially? All of it's vanity. God will give you a higher standard. Why would he give you a higher standard if you're going to continue to reject it, thinking that the world's standard is the highest standard? Because your eye is fixated, right, on the world, trusting in the world. We claim Christ, we do, but the truth, let's let the truth be told. If I go into anybody's house, it's modeled after the world. It is not modeled after Christ. We do exactly what the world has always done, and that is vanity and vexation of spirit. Just because we label it holy, label it Christianity, or label it Christ, that doesn't mean that's what it is. Our standards are coming from the world. Isn't that something? From your hairstyles, to your clothing, to the way you arrange your house, to the habits you have in your house. All of it has been taught by who? Mankind. Just think of that. I'll be back in a minute right here at COT. Okay, everybody, I'm back. Almost forgot what the button was. Are you kidding me? That was vanity. Okay, so this wise gentleman tried to find what men should do all the days of their life, to have their life be full. And although he enjoyed all the labors, as it says in chapter 2, of all of what he did, he enjoyed them. He found them to be vanity. Then he says, what else is there to do after you've been a king? And he saw the results of his kingship, how it increased evil, how it increased folly. Wisdom increases folly. Light increases darkness. That is true. I like this book, can you tell? All of it was vain and folly. He's saying this for a reason. He searched it out for us. And if we give heed to what he's saying, you'll find yourself not doing what so many have done before you, right? Because, listen, there's a part of me that's not very happy with some of the messages I heard when I was young. I'm just telling you the truth, because I like people to, before I go and do something, let me know if it's going to hurt. Let me know if it's going to be good, or if it's going to be bad. Just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and do it. Just let me know. Nobody let me know. They didn't. They did not let me know. I wish I would have known that Christianity would bring evil, would bring darkness, would bring challenges, would put a target on your back. I would have been so far by now. But, like some of you, I thought it was going to be peaches and cream, and it was not. In fact, it was instantly challenging. Every step of the way, you attempt to do right, here comes darkness. He searched out everything, and he found all as vanity. Now, before you go and say, well, I'm going to just stop everything. No, that's not the point of this reading, right? It's not the point of this reading. One of the points already is to not have your heart in something that will end up being nothing. We just went over the earthly things that are vanity and vexation of spirit, something that will leave your spirit empty. It does not feed your spirit, it does you no good. Some things that you could lose in a moment of time that are not guaranteed. Oh, by the way, and you're going to learn, right? You're going to learn, because a lot of people say, well, this is what they say, but for some reason they go against it. I've heard people make the argument that the Bible is authoritative. That's what they say, right? So we're going to talk about some authoritative things. My thing is this: if the Bible is authoritative, why do so many ignore Ecclesiastes? So many. I'll tell you why. It's not usually read. It's just not usually studied. It's kind of like the book of Kings. It's kind of like the book of Samuel. It's often not gone over, right? And so there are certain aspects to the book that people just don't know yet. But you're talking about a departing of a richness she never had before, and a confidence that you thought you could not acquire, that you will. And to give position of your life, and that although you've been attempting and possibly you wasted half your time, none of your time is a waste. When you learn these things, puts things in perspective. But in truth, we've been chasing men's dreams. We've been emulating mankind, not Christ, mankind. If we were to emulate Christ, it would have to be received spiritually. It would have to be by the Holy Spirit, which means there would be an internal consensus of all of us, not just one of us, all of us. All of us. So he concluded all these things that men aspire to do after men. And there's nothing new under the sun. They have done it before, and it's ended before. It ended disastrously. All of it's vanity, but they're doing it again. And it will end disastrously. But nevertheless, they still pursue it. We do too. We are parakeets and copycats, aren't we? We would like to say we're original, right? But we're not. We wear clothes after the fashion of people. And I'll tell you something else. The Lord has put things in us. But because the rest of the world was not doing it, we didn't do it either, period. And because the rest of the world was not saying it, we didn't say it either. Now, I'm a bit off in that area, because I'll be the cuckoo wad of the bunch quickly. I don't normally go along with the crowd. In fact, if the crowd is doing something, I'm just immediately walking the other direction. Is that smart? Not always. And this is not about, right, going and hiding under a rock. No, because listen, one of the points you're going to learn here is if you're not able to step into the world, you've messed up somewhere. You should be immune. You should be immune enough to step anywhere on the face of this earth and to get things done. But see, nobody tells us that, do they? One of the first things they tell you is, well, what you got to do is you got to get away from all evil. You cannot do that because you're on the earth and you're in the flesh. No, you have to pierce evil, overcome darkness. You have to deal with it always. That's why Jesus is the light within us. Because he placed us in the darkness. We're lamps. And a lamp is not meant to be set under anything. We are that spectacle. Let me continue chapter 3. Let's go into chapter 3. This will close up our study for tonight. But before you listen, folks, this is written. I want you guys to have your Bibles. You're not gonna come back later on and say I made something up. You're gonna read this with me. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Now listen, every purpose under heaven. He didn't say every purpose in the heavens. I have to really emphasize this. He said, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. He did not say in the heavens. He didn't say by the heavens in this case. He said under the heavens. Let me give you a case in point, because a lot of people use this to exercise anger and to exercise other things. No, they use it like an excuse. He said it's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill. And none of us is going to go out there and kill. We're not. None of us will. We're not going to kill anything. A time to heal, that we might do. A time to break down, a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. No more than we're going to kill. Right? We're not going to kill. Most of us will not break things down. It's a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate. There it is. I've heard people say, oh, there's a time for hatred. Okay, so that means you're going to go out there and kill also. No. He said there's a time to kill. Are you going to go out and kill something? You're going to go out and cast stones at something? Because that's in there too. And we're not. That's why he said, under the heavens, there is a season for these things. When he says there's a season to every purpose under heaven. Men go through stages. Within life, there are stages. That's what he's talking about. Not a license to go and do this stuff, but that in the world, there are going to be seasons where these things are exercised, just like your children go through seasons. A child's heart is full of folly, but they don't remain a child, nor do we. Do you see? A time to love, a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. He said, what profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? Question. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God hath given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. Second time he says this. That he saw the travail which God hath given the sons of men to be exercised in it. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their heart. Did you see this? He has set the world in their hearts. Now, see, this is why accusation is no good. If God set the world in a person's heart, then they're full of the world because God put it there. Why? Because of his seasons and his purposes, and what we have to overcome to actually choose him, and that choice to be of truth. The choice we make for Christ is going to be of truth. It's going to be of truth, not of a lie. It's going to be of truth. And so we have things set in us to overcome. As we overcome, it takes the power of choosing the Lord to do so. Or else we digress back into the world so easily. Many of us know that. Many of us know that. He says, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their hearts so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Yet you have people searching for all the deepest secrets of the living God, when in truth, they should have worked on their relationship with Christ, accepted his gift, been content with what the Lord had them placed in, and maximized the holiness in their lives. I had to give you this reminder. He's given us just enough time to truly make a choice in all things, to truly choose him in those choices. He's given us just enough time. He didn't give us, we have a lifetime, but that lifetime has an expiration date. And within that lifetime, you will have chosen by way of truth, period. He says, I know that there is no good in them. That's what he says. But for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. Did you guys see that? He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he has set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them. There is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. Now, this is the wisest man that ever was or ever will be. And did you hear the statement he just said? That was Ecclesiastes 3:10 through 3:12. He says, and also, every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God. Let me help you guys understand this, because he says this again. Why would he say, it is good for every man to eat and drink? He said this in chapter 2. It is good for every man to eat and to drink and to enjoy the good of his labor. It is the gift of God. I'll tell you why. He lived every lifestyle. He examined every lifestyle. So what did he find so pleasing about this one? That God places you within godly seasons, right? Whereas you find yourself in one of these worldly seasons, but God will place you in a godly season if you receive of him. He will grant you a labor, but it will be a joy to execute that labor. Let me be the first to tell you something, right? When I was small, I loved art. I loved art. I loved music. I liked to create. That's what I liked to do. I loved engineering. As I grew, I loved engineering a lot, right? I loved electronics. Then I got into computer science and robotics and advanced robotics and all this other stuff, right? But look what I'm doing. I had a career shift, big time. I didn't have to do this. I didn't. But I essentially scooted out of one area of life, right? To doing what I'm doing now. Many of you will call that a downgrade. I had no intention of doing this. Everybody in my family knows I had no intention of doing this. Angela knows I had no intention of doing this. I am a reserved person who keeps my opinions to myself. All of a sudden, something hit me. It did. A passion beyond passion. Things repetitious beyond things repetitious concerning the Lord. Both a cry and a praise, and it wouldn't stop. A fire that won't go out. The burning of the bones in the bones that nothing can quench. I didn't choose this, because I would have never chosen anything like this. Not ever. It wasn't me to talk to people like this. It wasn't me to share what's in my heart with people, especially concerning my faith. That wasn't me. It wasn't me. But then the Lord takes over. And if you don't resist, right? Because I'm an engineer by heart, tactician by heart, right? I was going into something really high. And then so this is where I end up. But I'm telling you this for a reason. If you would accept what the Lord gives you, despite what it looks like, if you would see it as a gift, never curse, Never some, daunting task or anything like that. No, but a joy as to what it is. It's an honor, the callings of the Lord. It's an honor to be able to do anything in a capacity of servitude to the Lord for what he did for me. It's an honor. Then it becomes an avenue. And once your contentment, once your thanks of it steps in, it becomes fulfilling. And nothing else satisfies after that. Nothing else satisfies. It's a labor of love. It's an impossible task on a daily basis. The whole thing is impossible. But it's a labor of love. So what he's saying that the Lord will give you or place you, because all else is vanity when man seeks it on his own. But when the Lord places you, I mean, it gives you a labor, and you take joy in that labor. That truly is, because he says, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is a gift of God. It's a gift. It really is a gift of God. It really is. It's a gift. You know what? Everything, it's so strange, because there are challenges. There are challenges, yes. There are impossible obstacles, yes. But it's still a gift of God, because nothing can yield what it yields. And at times it seems like nothing can take what it takes, but nothing can yield what it yields. And I have nothing but thanks for it. I don't curse it. I don't do that. I don't say, well, I wish it wasn't me. No, I don't do that. I just take it and do the best that I can do. Out of the heart. No formulas, none of that big stuff, right? You guys know me. I know, straight from the hip, basically. But it's a joy. It's fulfilling, and nothing else has been. I'm telling you, I've been there at the top, and it's not fulfilling. It just wasn't fulfilling. I know people right now at the top. They're not fulfilled either. They haven't found what I've found. Or let's say they haven't been given what I've been given. They have an opportunity, but that's up to us to accept it. And most often, right, we accept things based on advantage. I didn't accept this based on advantage. It was at a disadvantage. It's at a disadvantage. I don't expect that to change. I expect it to continue, right? Because it is a what? Labor. A labor is not a handout. A labor is something you're going to do something for. A labor is something that never stops. It continues. And when you do things and you labor to do it, the Lord is faithful. He's faithful. He really is faithful. Listen, the key is this. You ready for the key? It must be a labor. It must be something of yourself poured into something else. Right? Never getting used to anything and just sit back and wait till it comes. None of that but a labor. If it's not a labor, you've turned it into something else. That means, and Satan's going to be after you to pervert everything God does for you. Don't let him pervert that. It's a labor. It's a labor. But it's a joyful labor. Is it hard work? You better believe it. Does it take away from you? You better believe it. But nothing can top the reward. Nothing. That's whatever you do. Whatever you guys do, whatever the Lord places you in. For some, it must yield for you. For some of you, it must yield. But the Lord has conditioned you to handle whatever he puts you in, so long as it's from him. But when you go into this world and you seek something for the sake of advantage to gain all of what you can gain, that's when you have the vexation of spirit. That's what we just read about. The conditions by which you go out into the world is going to matter. Why you do what you do is going to matter. It will take away from you, end up being nothing, or you can be absolutely content. Have a joyful heart because it's a labor for good. And you heard what he just said. He gave no specific title to anything. That's not what he did. And I love that part too, because it can mean you could be a mechanic. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters that the Lord did it. It matters that you're operating in one of the Lord's seasons, not having the worldly ambition where you would lose your soul, because that's when you end up with vexation of spirit. See, a lot of people have tried to make it work. They have tried to pursue something for themselves, right? And they've tried to hang on to the Lord, and they found nothing but vexation of spirit. And if any of you are out there and you've done that yourselves, you already know there's vexation of spirit. You can chase it all day. You can do good in it, but there's vexation of spirit, and there's an emptiness nothing can fill. You already know that. You already know it. But when the Lord does something, it's above and beyond what you expected. It's so far removed from any standard. Right? A lot of people don't like me because they're the standard they cannot see. I'm telling you right now, I had no plans to do this, to be here, to have COT, to speak on COT. Angela and I lied on the first day we met. We did. Told a big one. Lord forgive us. We both told a big one. Big scorching, hot one. That was a big one. Because we said, no, we'll never speak to people. We were going to find someone to speak to you guys. I don't even know how it altered. I can't remember. But it did. It did. And I'm sure we're not the only ones that happened to. That's going to happen to. In fact, I know we're not the only ones. We're not some folks out there right now in that chat room, some folks listening to me right now, don't ever say, well, I'll never get up and do that. Don't say that. Don't you do it. You could be sitting in the shadows, never talking, never do anything. You'd be just the one the Lord calls, come up to the front. You could have be in a capacity in one place in COT. The next thing you know, you're going to be the lead speaker. So don't ever say what you won't do, or that you're not going to be doing something, but I have something better, right? Seek the Lord's way in all things. And in all things you find yourself doing, give thanks, and the Lord will direct you. He will. Instead of praising the world or pursuing the world in what you do and having more of the world, give God thanks for what you do. Instead of complaining that possibly you're not making enough, or maybe you don't have that raise, give God thanks right there where you are. And watch what happens. Listen, when I say give God thanks, don't just say the words. Don't just say the words. That's not what I'm talking about. You think about your employment. You think about your position. And you always remember something. It could be far worse. It could be worse. You could be trapped in one of your trials or tribulations you barely escaped, huh? Think about that and be thankful. If something has happened to you, be thankful it's not worse. When I ran that router up through my, bone, that could have been worse. I could have lost my arm, right? I could have lost it. So I'm so thankful. And you know what? I believe that thanks is healing. In fact, I know thanks is healing. I know it is. I already know it is. I know that's a missing key to a lot of people. And you know what? I just don't run around verbally thanking the Lord. That's not what I do. I am truly thankful internally on a continuous basis. It does not hit me 1 hour and then go away for the week. It's not what happens. With everything I do, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, right? If I eat something, I will say, Lord, thank you for providing this. And I'll remember instantly the days when nothing was provided. If I get out, if I go somewhere and a vehicle starts, I'll say, Lord, I'll stop. I'll say, Lord, thank you. I am extremely appreciative. I do that with everything. When I turn this system on, right, I'll give it a remote start and I'll say, Lord, thank you. Thank you. Because I remember the times when you remember computers used to, the blue screen of death. Remember that? It could be worse. All things could be worse. If something happens to me by way of health, I already know it can be far worse. I'll start remembering some of the worst times and I'll say, thank you, Lord, you delivered me. Thank you. I don't even ask for healing. I'm thankful for the season upon me right now. And I'm telling you, every time that comes from my heart, the whole thing changes. Now, I just gave you something. And I hope that some of you utilize that, because I'm telling you, I'm not giving you something I read about. I'm not giving you something that's a theory. I'm giving you something I live by. A simple things of everything. And believe me, I contemplate everything. Everything. And I'm incredibly thankful, because it could be worse. People don't always know what you do, where you are, what's gone wrong and what's gone right. So if a person to me, if they still say hello or something like that to me, I'm incredibly thankful. See, I know what it's like for a person not to understand anything. And they can't stand you simply because you didn't, do something. But when they still say hello, I'm incredibly thankful, because it could be worse. No one can have understanding of what you say, of what you're doing. It can always be worse. The old man is in the grave in my life, right? But I remember the state of the old man, and I'm grateful, because it could be just like that again. Not because of Christ, it's not. Only because of Christ, it's not. That's a key. Once you're thankful where you are, that's when things change. Because doesn't the Lord say, will you serve me? Didn't he ask Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep? He said that 3 times. Why? You know what 3 times means? When somebody asks you something 3 times, it was understood back in that culture that they were asking to see if in all conditions would you perform the task despite the conditions. If it was asked of a person 3 times, that was understood to mean just that. So if a parent would ask a child something 3 times, it meant, would they comply in all conditions, not just favorable ones? As part of their custom. That was a free one too. Let me continue here. He says, and also every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all of his labor. It is a gift of God. He says, I know that whosoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Whatever God does, it shall be forever. God does in the eternal thing. He does. It shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, right? Which means you can't, you're not going to weld something to the side of it, right? Nor anything taken away from it. It's going to remain consistent. And God doeth it, that men should fear before him. God does this. In other words, if God does something, it's never altered. Men have no power over it. Why do you think we still have the Bible? We still have the story of Christ. Because our Father said we would. And of all the times when that story was to be lost, and when it was changed, they went back to find the original writings. And we got it anyway. They had no power to change that decree of the living God. They had no power to do it. And God does it that men should fear before him. That fear means great respect. Listen, that which hath been is now. That which hath been is now. That which hath been is right now. And we've been here before. And that which is to be hath already been. And God requireth that which is past. And moreover, I saw the sun. I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that the wicked was there, and the place of the righteous, that iniquity was there. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. This is very important. Ecclesiastes 3:18. I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above beasts, for all is vanity. Isn't that something? Without the Spirit, that born-again Spirit. Did you hear that? Did you hear it? Now you know why. God says what he says about people of the world. Didn't God call them brute beasts? Yes, he did. Didn't he say they walk around like brute beasts? Yes, he did. And he also confirmed by himself, man has no preeminence above the beasts. That without the Spirit God gives, man is but a beast. And sure enough, he has beastly desires, just like a beast. And that's the world. That's how they formulate their laws, after the desires of flesh, to pacify flesh. Because if they don't pacify flesh, why do you think Rome built the arenas? Why do you think they had gladiators? Because if you don't satisfy flesh, flesh will act it out. It's going to get exactly what it needs to get, just like an animal. An animal can be docile, but can also be aggressive and playful. An animal is an animal. An animal follows instincts. And without your spirit, so did we follow the desires of flesh, which were instinctive at best. Thoughts that are common to all flesh, to do all things that are iniquitous to our Father. And have you noticed that righteousness is formulated in such a way as to not be a beast, but to be disciplined, to have power over flesh? Listen, he said, all go unto one place, all are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. He said, who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, and the spirit of beasts that goeth downward to the earth? Did you hear that? Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that his portion, his time, right, his earthly purpose, for who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? And that is true. No one has done that, save for the prophecies of our Father, which men do stress to understand. Right? So much wisdom in these things. But here we have this scenario again, the emphasis and the closing. When you pursue this worldly life, there is vexation of spirit. There is. There is uselessness or vanity. Given all the paths he took, trying to see what way was best that men should do all the days of their life. Even when he sought to understand it by way of his wisdom, not losing himself in any lifestyle he pursued, he saw all of it was vanity. Even, he said he was a preacher, but he said he even saw that as vanity. And then he gave the reasons why. But then he gives us a key. Right? The world In the world, there are seasons, weather seasons, but there are also seasons over man, under heaven. Times of war, peace, sowing, reaping, all these things are for men. But then he bursts out, he says something. He's talking about the labors, not the labors you sought out like he did in the first 2 chapters, calling them vanity, but what God has given you, that you should, in your labors, eat and drink and enjoy the good of those labors. Enjoy the good of those labors. To enjoy the good of the labors, you're thankful, right? You're very thankful. Even Jesus said that. That's why he said men ought to pray always. That's why he also said that we should always give thanks. Always. Why? Because the Lord places us. God places us. Not for our hurt. And we may not necessarily pick the career he places us in, but he knows exactly what would give us joy. And in this calling that we have upon our lives, you're going to find out that men have given themselves the burden of going out into the world and getting beat up. They did that themselves. You're going to see that. And then we're going to read about Jesus confirming it. And then your mouth is going to drop open. Wait a minute. You're going to say, I never saw that before. It's in there. It's in there. You also saw something about beasts of the earth. The similarities between the beasts of the earth and man, the spirit makes a difference. Because without the spirit, the Russians proved that back in the first time, the first times they were going into space. Well, they went out to Earth's magnetosphere. Their neurological connections in the human brain broke down, and those 2 men came back as raving lunatics, just like animals. They had no memory. All their neurological connections had broken, which gave them a basic set of instinctive patterns that they would do, just like animals. They were growling and everything else. They were biting each other and fighting, very aggressive. They said they stunk. They never recovered. Never. So if your neurological connections are broken, you revert back into an animal. Do you know that? I believe it's your neurological connections that keep you tied, your spirit tied to that body. That's why you're born in that body, so you believe that that body is yours, thus strengthening those neurological connections. Because when you believe something, you form new neurological connections, or you can reinforce the ones that already exist. When you don't believe something, you begin to erase it from everything in your brain. Do you know that? You weaken those connections. People that are hopeless, they weaken those connections, and they can start to drift. They can lose their minds. That's a scientific thing they found out. They found out so much. They just won't tell anybody. Just like the Bible says, they're going to keep it secret until Jesus comes back and discloses everything. But God said they are without excuse. Because by studying creation, they have found that God's word is true. Those scientists at CERN, they have found God's word is true. But they're choosing something different. It's kind of like those who have tampered with time. You know what's funny? Those who tampered with time, it had nothing to do with time and everything to do with size. Size is time and time is size. For example, some of your smaller particles should have no more power, right? You shouldn't have power to run an entire city for 8 months. But the smaller these particles are, the more power they maintain. You know what that means? That much power must have an equal mass. You can't have something that has little to no mass at all that can generate the mass to run a city all on its own. You can't have that unless they have found this, which is given way to unlock some mysteries about size. And when I say size, anything that can tamper with time can also miniaturize itself to a smaller component. Do you know what that means? Angels appear in many different forms. You can know why if you put that together. They don't have to be huge. They can be tiny. They can be right there in your house. They can be anything they want to be. Their size is not going to dictate their power or their mass. They know that by the experiments at CERN. They know mass. Well, that didn't work out. And so they revised that formula. They found that Einstein was wrong 12 times so far. But, just like Einstein talked against black holes, yet his own theory proved it was real. But you guys don't know about those contradictions, do you? His mathematics proved that black holes were real. But Einstein himself said that there's no such, that's nonsense. You guys know that? That happens all the time in science. It does. Publish papers and people support things, and yet verbally they say, no, it's not real. I don't know what's going on with the mathematics. That also means a black hole can fit the palm of your hand and do absolutely nothing. Why? Because there are other variables. It doesn't always have to have its mass pulling on anything. They found that out a long time ago, which means they can be influenced. And if they can be influenced, time can also be tampered with. And if time can be tampered with, so can size. Time, the flow of time, dictates size. Whether that same object would be large, small, perceivable, or imperceivable. Lockheed Skunk Works finished all the mathematics on that, applied mathematics on that. But the world continues to go on, and nothing ever happens, and the Lord doesn't come and get us, which I don't believe. That's going to be for your children. They'll talk about that on the radio openly with new devices and things they have. Because disclosure's coming, but we're not talking about some ET stuff. We're talking about man-made technologies that are very real, that they've been using, that, just other people have said, no, don't let everybody know about this. But the people that are in the world right now, they are, I'm not saying they're holy, right? But they want people to be able to access everything. And those people are the ones taking over everything. By the way, it's also going to be the demise of most of us. But because a kingdom is rising, and it's going to rise just that way. Through peace, he shall destroy many. He shall scatter among them the prey, the spoils, and the riches. He'll provide them with wealth, a very wealthy kingdom, and very wealthy citizens, and indeed the world is about to become very wealthy, and it will be a snare on all those who have a desire to have wealth. If you base your life upon wealth, you're going to have a problem. If you think you're blessed only because you have, you're going to have a problem. A blessing is an impartation, not something you own. A blessing is an empowerment, not necessarily something you can touch. That's what a blessing is. To be blessed is to be empowered. Please remember that. You go back to the root meanings, that's what you'll find. Okay, folks, wait a minute. Let me finish the last piece. Can I do that? Oh, we already did, didn't we? We did. Let me read this last part one more time. Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. Listen, that a man rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. Notice it said that a man rejoice in his own works, right? Does that contradict what Jesus said? No, it doesn't. You know why? Jesus said, they were following Christ, and then he said, you follow me because you ate. Jesus said, my meat is to do the will of the Father, right? He also said that his labor, the labors that he did, They are his because of his love for the Father. In other words, anything they would say that were his, he said, no, it's my Father's. I have a desire to do it. I will carry it out. He also said, all those who enter into the place of rest have ceased from their own labors. And in that same context, he said their labors have become the labor of the Lord. So then your own personal labors become the holy labors. Isn't that something? That's where all your joy is planted in. So does it contradict anything? No. It's just that people don't often have these things in context together. Now, what does that say about your current life? Hopefully you can see that this pursuit of worldly ways has people vexed in their spirits, has them angry because everybody is so afraid they're going to lose something. Haven't you noticed? That is the number one topic of today. How to keep everything you have. It's in everybody's mouth. Well, not mine, but most people's mouth. Haven't you noticed? You think that's coincidence? We're reading Ecclesiastes. He's talking about the same thing. This is the spirit of the world because God's children do not talk about keeping everything. Unless we're going to keep the commandments of the living God. Right? But can't you see it? Vexation of spirit. And this vanity, this emptiness, people often find in their lives is caused by their own personal pursuit, modeled after those who came before them. And what happened to those who came before them? They all perished. So why would you pursue something? And he said, there's nothing new under the sun. So if it led to nothing, why would you think that somehow is going to lead to something this time? We do this with every election. I use the election because it's something we do all the time. People get hyped up and the same results we do have every single time. And then when election time comes up again, just like clockwork, people say, oh, this time. They've been saying, oh, this time since elections started. Oh, this time we're going to get everything. They never get everything. One thing they do get, right? They get another president. That's what they get. And you get a bunch of angry people and disappointed people because they always swap sides, and one person, there's going to be one side that will never get what they want. Can't you see how it works? So then why do people continually believe in something that has never happened? Doesn't that just blow your mind up? They do it every single time. That's the way of the world. And if you stay in the world, you're going to have vexation of spirit on a continual basis. You're going to be empty, following a vain thing, having nothing at the end of it, having all hopes but nothing at the end. You're going to be excited for it only to be let down at the end. And then after it's over, another cycle will start and the same thing will happen again and again and again and again. But your Father will give you something. He will grant you his season. Not the season under heaven, but he will place a season upon you that is in the heavens. We just read about all the seasons and what happens in all these seasons under heaven. At the beginning it says, to everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under heaven. He was not talking about in the heavens. He was talking about the doings of man, which end up in what? Vanities and vexation of spirit. Vexation is the draining of one's life. That's terrible. The draining of your spirit. Vanity is likened to something being useless. And we have those results on a continuous basis, don't we? I call it the yo-yo syndrome, and now you know what that is. Now you know what that is. It's when these things are repetitive in your life and you can't get out of them. Every time you succeed, you start to fail. Every time you go up, you start going down. That does not exist when the Lord places you where he desires you to be. See, he has something for each of you. God has something for each of us. No one ever told me this. No one told me this. In fact, when I openly accepted Christ, they said, now you can do anything you want. That was a lie. That was the biggest lie in history. No, they should have told me the truth. It should never be a salesmanship opportunity, but it should be the truth. And that way, when a person makes a decision, they make a sober decision. They realize and understand what it entails. No trickery, no marketing, just the truth. I'm an oddball. I am. Folks, tomorrow we're going to go through 4. I'm going to have to change the page, of course, because we hit chapter 3 tonight. We weren't supposed to. So tomorrow we're going to go through 4 through 6. Okay. 4 through 6. If we can. Mind you, 4, these are heavy. 4 is heavy. 5 is heavy. 6 is a toe stopper. We're going to have a conversation in those tomorrow. They set some things right? They do. Now, I'll say it one more time. The book of Ecclesiastes should not be read in these, broken up portions. It should be read in context all the way through. If you ever get time, sit down and read the whole thing. All right, without it being separated, and allow the Lord to speak to you directly from that book. Get it into your spirit. It is a book of a great wisdom. It does disclose many traps in today's world that can hardly be seen anymore, and it advises you in the true ways of the Lord that are echoed all throughout the Word of God. Right? In a very simplistic way, but it relates to you also because we have to live in this world. We do have occupations. And a lot of people ask the question, well, how do I do both? And it discloses that. It discloses so much. These were just the foundational chapters, right? That give you the initial idea of what he did. And remember, he was the wisest person that would ever be or would be again. Nobody else will be as wise as him. And for him to say that the end result of all these paths in life are vanity, save one, that's saying something. It really gives answer to so many things. See, in our lives, we pursue things and we say, well, I thought that would be the answer, but it wasn't. Then we do it again. Well, I thought that would be the answer, then it wasn't. I met somebody the other day and they said, well, you know what? I'm just done with everything. I said, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to go out and be a survivalist. I said, but that's still modeled after some guy who did that. I was trying to show him you can't escape. The ways of the world are programmed everywhere unless the Lord grant you something spiritual that is modeled after his blessing. If it doesn't give you that, you're going to be doing something that somebody did before you, and it didn't end good. It never ends good. Never. Okay, folks, I got to go. I can't ramble on too long. I'm going to see you guys next time right here at COT for part 2 of this study. The schedule's on the homepage. All right, I have to change it, of course, because we were supposed to do 1 and 2 today, and we ended up doing 1 through 3. But tomorrow we continue. All right, we continue. And we're going to go forward. I hope that you guys gleaned what's in this book. Tonight's chapters were foundational. Right, they're very foundational. And I hope that you go back and read these. Just kind of look over them, especially for tomorrow. I hope you do. Because you know what? It would... See, I get excited a lot. You guys, I get excited. I don't have... some of the same pitfalls as everybody else has because I've submitted myself to the wisdom in these books. And I'm telling you something. If you can see what's being said here right? You'll no longer be in that vicious cycle that so many find themselves in. You don't have to be up today, down tomorrow, right? In all and embrace right now and then left by yourself tomorrow. You don't have to go through that. You don't have to. Christ has come. All things have changed. You're in the last times. This happens to be your time. And has anybody thought to themselves, because it's not, you guys, you're so blessed you don't even know it. You're extremely blessed. You just have no idea how blessed. I want you to see it not be caught in this vicious cycle where people tear themselves down so much by following these pursuits of the world. Now, if you have a corporate job or something like that, be thankful for it. Be thankful for it. That's all you have to do. I'm not talking about by words, but mostly by your heart. Consider it that things can be far worse. That is God's grace. This is why you attribute the good to Him and watch what happens and be thankful for it. You want your life to flip from that yo-yo syndrome, from that something happens all the time. You want it to change from that to a true blessing, that you may perceive what a blessing is. Then start being thankful for everything and consider your thanks of everything. Realize all things could be worse. Please do that. Hey, listen, God bless each of you. I'm going to see you guys tomorrow right here at COT, same time. Schedule's on the homepage. All right. And I may be back a little later. I got to do a couple things to the site in addition to changing the schedule. You guys are forcing me to do that. Changing the schedule. And I have a couple things to put in the chat room, some tools for the for us, for everybody, and for us at the same time. So God bless each of you. That means I'll see some of you here in a few. God bless you. I'll see you all tomorrow, Lord willing, right here at COT. God bless.